Well, here we are, another episode of Automating Success with another person that I feel like we're kind of kindred spirits. We're gonna, I think, have the same type of passion in certain industries and trying to solve the same problems. So, without further ado, let me introduce Christopher Thacker. He went from being a 12-year-old kid with a shovel to running one of Toronto's largest snow removal operations, clearing nearly 550 commercial properties last season in the downtown core. Chris's company, Mr. Mow-It-All, which I love the name, by the way, specializes in urban snow removal in peak season. The company employs nearly 80 field employees who are supported by 12 office and management staff. Landscape Trades connected with Thacker to learn more about his passion for snow and ice management. Chris also has some other things that we're going to talk about today that he's doing. He's kind of like me. He's got this serial entrepreneurial disease. Looks like he's looking into doing some software to help with his people, which is why I'm excited to have him on Automating Success. And also does some machine rentals with another company that we will get into. And this is what happens when I get off track on my notes. Now I actually don't see the name of that company. So
It's
I'm going to
Purple
turn it over to
Rentals.
you and you can introduce the names because I just totally.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me. So yeah, I run Mr. Modal in Toronto. Bio might be a little outdated. We do have about 1,100 sites downtown Toronto. We're primarily a snow removal company, so the name's a bit of a misnomer. At some point, I guess we'll have to rebrand it. But that's kind of my primary company, and then we have also equipment rental business where we rent loaders and sidewalk tractors, and that's called Purple Rentals. And then, as you're mentioning, I also got another company. The disease continues, where we're building dispatch product for primarily aimed at snow removal and landscape companies, but it's pretty applicable to anybody that deals with actual things on a map and needs to send crews there.
So I think that the people that follow the show are going to realize we're going to probably be instant best friends by the end of the show. Even though that I botched the bio, and this is why, every now and then you should just let people introduce themselves. But the good
It's
news
okay.
is it shows how fast you're growing, and the information I pulled from the internet was just didn't update fast enough. So
Fake
congratulations
news.
to you for that. Yeah, it's fake news. Exactly. So let's get started with the snow side first, because much like myself, that's the first business I ever owned myself. So what inspired you to start doing snow removal?
Well, it was January 2006. I was 12 years old, came home from school. It was a major snowstorm. And I remember taking the family snow shovel out and going and banging on doors. And I came home with $80, which, back in 2006, that was, still today, that's a good amount of money. Back then, that was a lot. And so I think I kind of got bitten by that bug. And I think like a lot of people in this industry, you kind of start at that level and then you just never stop. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, like you're not just a kid with a shovel. You've got trucks, and over the years, did lots of various things. We did landscape maintenance. We still do landscape maintenance, but I used to like mow, like ride around on my bike, pulling a lawnmower around, and so really like kind of like grassroots business. Started small, then started hiring staff, started joining groups and learning from others, and ended up growing to where we're at today.
Yeah, that's amazing. I you know, kind of similar for me. I did a side job when I was an electrician for a guy, and as I'm going to say luck would have it, my four-wheel drive went out on the truck I was driving, and he let me take his
Mm,
snowplow truck home. And I took it home and I started playing around with the snowplow on the truck, and I was like, "This is the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life." And I instantly got into the business, and I haven't looked back since. Um, so yeah, it is a great business, and I think that most people think guys like us, people like us, are crazy for what we do because we're up all night. But I kind of like it because there's not a lot of people that that want to be in the space. So the people that are in the space usually know their numbers, and it can be a profitable space as long as we stay professional. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think for there's a segment of people like us and probably lots of your listeners. I think there's also a segment of people where it has a very it definitely has end of life at some point, but it kind of gets inside you. There's I don't think I need to convince anybody listening. It is like fighting a snowstorm's a hard thing, but it's thrilling at the same time. So it takes a definitely a certain type of crazy to like it. And I think, I think the industry overall is in really good shape. I think, various ways it's getting more and more professional, more and more technology every year. I'm 30 now, but so I can't comment on what happened like in the 80s and stuff. But I hear the stories where people had like, people used to get out of trucks and angle blades themselves, and just the fact that like you had like a pump that would lift the plow up was a big deal. And then so to think that people went from plowing parking lots with these manual tilt blades to where we're at today, where you're running like metal plus loaders and you're able to clean right down the ground, to even some of the autonomous stuff. It's kind of crazy. So and I think
Well,
because of
it's so
yeah.
interesting. It's so interesting you bring that up. And actually, I feel like nobody ever talks about that very often. I mean, I've got 15 years on you, but I still remember the first snow plow. Actually, the first snow plow I ever had was actually a Snowway, because I put it on a Ranger and it had down pressure. It was like I felt like the coolest freaking person ever. But to think where we started, you're so right. I remember a couple of guys at the time that we were working with, and you still had the cables that came out that were attached to the joystick, and the cables would freeze and the plow would angle. You'd be out there with blow torches trying to just get it to unfreeze. And yeah, you're right. Now you look at it, it's like we still have, we run a combination of pushers, but people will see that we just have Protex with rubber bottom, and they're like, you don't. You just have a square box, and it's like it is funny to see how fast the
That
industry.
was groundbreaking at one point in time.
It was,
Yeah.
and I have to say, I remember I used to think I still think I'm the best snowplow guy in the world. I mean, I always say I can plow an acre
I'll give you the
faster than
American. You'll be the best one in America.
yeah. All right. Sounds good. Well, we should, all of us leaders, we should get together and have some sort of like competition one day. If we could just make snow, it'd be actually pretty fun. See who can plow an acre the fastest. But for a while, I almost fought the whole front end loader like movement to put a loader out. And then first time you get in a machine with a 16 or 20-foot box in front of you and the snow just starts stacking up, it's a whole different experience.
Yeah. No, it's definitely, and the way I explain it to my team, it's like having loaders and all that stuff. It's all about that reserve capacity too, right? Like, yeah, a truck can handle stuff in like 2-3 inches, even on small sites, but wait till you get pounded with like some type of nor'easter, or a couple of years back, we got like 60 centimeters, and you end up sending these things to places you never thought you were going to send them, but it gives you lots of reserve capacity.
Well, about the year you got started, we had a huge blizzard in Illinois. We had one in 11, one in 15, and every place we had a front end loader. I mean, our accounts that had skid steers did okay, but every place we had a front end loader, those parking lots were wet when the roads were still closed. I mean,
Yeah.
they were already done, salted, we were good to go. So yeah, I mean, you are right about that. And the best thing that I saw come out with some of these pushers were that you could fold them in. It's all about being able to travel with them now, because that's the only bad thing. If you don't have a big enough site for that asset to constantly be working, it almost
Yeah.
is like they get done so fast, the operators are pissed off that you don't have anything else for them. So, but anyways, we can get into that. I don't want to spend too much time on
Yeah.
just the joys of snow removal, because it sounds like you're smiling as big as I am. I do love doing it. So, what got you in? So, it's one thing to do the snow removal, and it's another thing to grow it, right? So,
Mhm.
what made you decide to be like, yeah, okay, this is like an enterprise. I'm going to build something of value here in the space.
Well, there's a couple of years back, and without divulging kind of like the intricacies of our entire business model, but I noticed there's an opportunity where we could go and basically take advantage of being in an urban market. So we're in a very urban market. Very few people, it seems, want to service right in urban cores. So we service right downtown Toronto, which is very similar to downtown Chicago. Like really like in Chicago, you guys call it the Loop. Think like that
Yeah.
type of area. So that's what we do in Toronto. And so most companies kind of operate from outside the city, and then come down versus we actually have our facility like almost right downtown Toronto. And so I just saw there's opportunity. Lots of companies kind of leaving that space. And also nobody wants to do like hand shoveling work or anything like that. Uh, so our specialty is we do sidewalks, small parking lots, and we operate a fleet of about 50 sidewalk tractors that we are able to run from site to site. And because our density is fairly good, we're able to go and service everything very quickly, do repeats of sites. And so that's kind of why I started growing. I just saw there was an opportunity. So if it sounded crass, like, oh, I just saw there was a money making opportunity. I saw there was an opportunity, and we went for it.
It's awesome. I think you bring something up that's interesting, with all this larger equipment that's coming out, that's all the stuff that gets the attention at the trade shows. And you can almost see it, as we speak. GIE is going on in Kentucky right now. And yeah, everybody's gonna be looking at the big stuff. Nobody's paying attention to the small stuff, and that's leaving that opportunity in the space. Um, I realized for us, same thing. So very similar models. We started working for municipalities, also doing their sidewalks. Actually, we plow roads for municipalities now. All their dead end, their cul-de-sacs, their alleys, because they're running all the big trucks. They can't get down those spaces, and we can come in and do it all for them. So you are right. There's an opportunity. I almost don't want to even say it on the show, but there's an opportunity there that people are just neglecting because they're taking the big glitzy front end loader with the big metal press, and they're forgetting that you could, as long as you're moving snow, you're making money.
Everybody's killing each other for an Amazon site. Everybody's trying to get like some distribution center, and there's underserved segments.
Correct. Well, and that's the thing for me, and it's always funny because I've had few snow people on the show, and I think we all realize we kind of get, I don't want to say stuck. We stick with what works for us. Like for a long time, we felt stuck in big box retail, and the problem with big box retail is if they can't push a shopping cart, they're complaining. So even though contractually it says start plowing snow at 2 inches, if there's 2/10 of an inch, they're like, where are you at? And it's like, okay, I'm literally just wearing down the metal cutting edge. There's nothing there, right? So, yeah, when you look at some of this stuff, you're absolutely right. You have to be diverse, right? Because if you get stuck with just the Amazons, if Amazon one day decides they're going to heat all their parking lots, which some days I wonder why that hasn't happened yet, you're in trouble, So, so yeah. So let's talk about the rentals part, because I have a theory in my mind. Like I know for me, I have tons and tons of equipment that sits right in the summer. I never want anybody else to touch it because I don't trust anybody else's operators. But what got you into that space?
So part of it's just I kind of a natural result of scaling, and also just like market dynamics. So, I've kind of always had that. Like I think lots of us, we go to snow trade shows and we hear the stories where people, purchase 100. They sell off their wheel loaders in the spring and they buy 100 in the fall and they make like 2 payments on it. We've all heard these stories. So I don't know. We've been trying to get into that game, but on the smaller side of things. And it was kind of like to be completely honest, it was a bit of a business deal that didn't necessarily go as planned. So we did like a fleet upgrade where we were planning to dispose of 10 sidewalk units that were only like 4 or 5 years old. Like still, they still got lots of life in them. And then we were replacing them and then adding more to our fleet in terms of new gear because we like running new stuff. And we started selling them and we weren't getting the expected resale rates, and it was a lot more better for us to rent it. And so this kind of just turned into like an accidental business where this gear that we were going to sell off and replace, for whatever reason, the resale market didn't have it, and we're able to, people want to rent this stuff instead of buying it, like it seems. So we already have a big apparatus. We're kind of like Southwest. We run just one type of equipment, in kind of every category. So we know how to service these things. We know how to keep them up and running. And we've almost sitting in our service center here right now. We've got enough parts to almost build, like 2 of these things ready to go. And so that's really what for us, we're like, hey, well, there's an opportunity here where we could go and rent this. And so that's kind of turned into its own business on its own right.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting because so like how you're looking at it, I had well, first I do the same thing in the automation space. I realize that most people don't want to buy anything. They all want to just have some sort of lease or service agreement. And a lot of companies have a subcontractor model, so
Mm-hmm.
they don't really have anything there to get the financing. So the model in snow that works out really well. And I realized the same thing was happening in the automation space, which is why AOS exists. I mean, most of the landscape professionals I work with are just leasing Husqvarna 550 for $300 a month, and
Mm-hmm.
it's done. But something else that I'll bring up to people so they can help learn with us is all the people I've had on the show, and when people do decide to get acquired or want to sell the business, you know, a lot of people don't realize that if you do that, you're gonna have to pay off all that equipment that you're paying it off for them. They're not paying it off
Mm-hmm.
for you. And then that comes out of your proceeds. And I've been trying to tell every person I talk to set up, buy your equipment in a holding company. And then in that holding company, you're you're set. If you end up deciding to sell your business, you can still lease them all the equipment out of your holding company, and you don't have to pay that debt off because your business was basically leasing from your own holding company. Now, at least in the United States, that's how we can do it. I assume it'd be the same for you. So
It's similar, and without diverging too much from the conversation, I just add like the other benefit of that is, and we're just starting to get to the point because of the scale that we're starting to get to, is that a few years ago I learned there's multiple ways to make money in business, and the first way is to sell a service to a customer, and hopefully it costs you a lot less to deliver that service, but there's money to be made in turning your equipment at good prices and maintaining your equipment yourself. If you can build a whole operation around it. Like look at Delta Airlines. Delta Airlines is one of the best, has one of the best RMO, like repair maintenance overhaul organizations in the entire world. And it directly leads to them being more profitable overall as a company. So, if you're able to build your equipment and your fleet into like a good cornerstone, it's another way to make money in your company.
yeah, no, absolutely. My brother John does a really good job of that, like figuring out how to equip these trucks, make sure they're equipped in a way that they're actually resellable um, after the fact, because that's the thing you've got to realize if you're going to resell them. Um, but yeah, on the equipment side, I mean, like you said something earlier, you have tons of useful life left in these things. You're getting 100 or 200 hours. Well, maybe you're getting more up there in Canada, but uh, you get a couple hundred hours a year out of these things. 5 years later, the people want to be in a new seat because basically new machines keep the butts in the seat, right?
Yep.
But there's a lot of people that are happy to have that machine because in their organization, it's a different machine. A different machine is a new machine.
Well, it's a new machine. It's a new
Yeah,
machine to them. So
sure. Yeah. So that's awesome. So you talked about the software side, of what you're doing, and that's really where we get to the automating success side. So you saw a need or an opportunity in a space, you got into it. Um, but typically, what you find is when you get into a space where there was an opportunity that other people are not in, there's not a lot of solutions to manage your people or to provide a solution in that space. And you have to be an innovator and make your own solution oftentimes, which I think is something that you had to do and you're doing for your own company. So, how's that going for you?
yeah, it's going pretty well. So, I'll give you a little backstory on what we're doing software wise and kind of why we're doing it. So in the wintertime, we actually have like somewhere between, depending on the snowfall, 120 to 140 people in the field. And like a lot of people in the snow business, we have a lot of seasonal staff and you just naturally get turnover, especially in these like lower snowfall years. And so what ends up happening is, especially, my company, we're not servicing like, just a couple large sites where you have experienced people there. We have, sometimes you're sending people to sites that aren't as familiar with these sites as you'd like them to be. And maybe as familiar as we tell our clients, all our staff are. And so how do you overcome this problem? And how do you make it very simple so that you're able to explain to someone what work they have to do on site? All the softwares of the world that we use in our industry, whether that be like Aspire or Element or you name them, there's a bunch of options. I find they do an incredible job of getting a crew to a site. They help you sell the work. Maybe then you turn that into a job, then you're able to route it. And then they do a great job of delivering the crew to the site. And then when they're done, it does a great job of then billing the work. But there's this big gap from when a crew gets on site to when a crew leaves, where quite often the people who are sending out in the field, they're like, well, what do I do here? Okay, I'm here now. The software did a great job of delivering me like a package almost to the property. That's really how it's built. But then how do I actually go and deliver what the client's looking for, what we need to do? How do you make sure that, if you send someone out to, hand shovel a site, for example, how do you make sure, if they've never been there before, that they're able to, that they get that back entrance, that they get that area that always gets missed. And it's really hard. And I think a lot of companies try to overcome it by adding like copious amounts of notes to jobs. And I'll tell you, in our existing or our previous system that we use, like we'd have some sites that have 15 notes in there. You think somebody at 3 a.m. is going to read 15 notes? I guarantee you they're not.
Yeah.
So it's like we're trying to build basically an interactive sitemap that allows kind of in an IKEA fashion, very little words. You explain to a crew what work they're doing, and then conversely get that data back. We're getting data back on a service area level that we can then go and use that data. You get better at pricing, better at job costing. Right now when you complete a site in most softwares, you're just getting a time for the overall site. We're getting times for, that sidewalk, we're getting times for that entrance, and we're doing it in a low friction way. And then we'll be able to use that. And I think maybe what's interesting for your listeners and people on here is, something that I've thought about. We don't really do much of automations, but it's like how, there's a lot of these automated solutions where you have humans and machines coexisting. How do you properly explain to the humans that this is the work the robot's doing, this is the work you're doing? And so how do you sequence this, and how do you get the best results out of people? And how do you give them the best knowledge and put that right in their hands in a very visible way?
So yeah, you and I, we're already friends now from this. So we realized the same thing. And how we did it was we assigned a time to everything. So to go off if you have automation doing something and a person doing something, if you don't take the time away from the person, they still spend the same amount of time on the site,
Exactly.
which then makes the automation a waste of money. Right.
Yeah.
So in you're part of SEMA, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So, one of the great things about being part of Snow and Ice Management Association is how they have all of the templates for 1,600 square feet of snow per shovel hour, 5,000 square feet of snow for a person behind a snow blower, 1 acre with an 8-foot blade, 1 hour. So what we did was, and maybe you're doing the same thing with your software. What we did was we took and assigned all of that, and depending on the template and how we bid it, we took that square footage so we can tell the shoveler, look, in a 1 to 3 inch snowfall, it's going to take you this many hours. Now, in 3 to 6 inch snowfall, you're going to have to shovel it twice. You're going to snowblow it twice. And what that does for us, and then you can elaborate, what you're doing is, it allowed them to move from site to site and realize, hey, there's a certain expectation here for time. And B, it gave them the expectation that if we call you out, we expect you to go through and shovel again. We don't want you to wait in your car for 6 inches and shovel at once, because our customer wants to see it every 1 to 3, right? So explain if you're kind of doing a very similar thing to that.
Yeah, it is. So we're actually we're trying to move away from obviously time is a part of everything, but instead of judging people on hours worked, like more of a square feet world where like this, it makes it a lot easier to compare people, especially in the summertime. Like, this crew mowed, 40,000 square feet today. This crew did that. And yeah, you're right. We do this stuff and it's very linear. What we're trying to get to is where it's a little bit more dynamic, because like conditions are different. And so how can you compare one crew to another, in the same snowstorm? And I think there's ways to do that. And, the other thing that I think is important to mention is I think when you go and talk to snow removal companies, we all kind of, when it snows, most of us, we have realistically one staffing plan, maybe two. In my company, we kind of have two, like if it's like a very light snowfall versus like a normal one. But what we're trying to do is also make it variable so that, depending on snow conditions, you can staff up or staff down and easily communicate that. So say you're having like a light snowfall, maybe you only have to call 80 people out. When you have a heavy snowfall, maybe you have to figure out how to bring 160 people out. How do you make that scalable? And how apply that production rates and do all that math in the back end.
See, this is where I think the space getting automation, which is the passion for me having this podcast, will fix that. So, let's dive into it. Like the worst thing that happens for us in our market, we get a lot of just salting events, right? So it's salt. Sometimes for the first month in December, that's all we're doing. It's half an inch, you go out and salt, you're done. Well, none of the operators get called out then. Shovelers don't get called out, operators don't get called out. And then you get your first big doozy in January, and they're like, yeah, I took a job at Walmart, bro. I'm out.
Yeah.
And it's like, shit, now who am I going to call? And then you start going down the list. And then, everything you did preseason for managing and training, that's all out the window. Because now overnight you're promoting a shoveler to a front loader operator, and you're sending someone there to teach them on site. I mean, this is all real world stuff. We can all
who here can drive this truck?
Correct. Yeah. And who wants to? I mean, you would think everybody would want to, but some people are like, I'm not driving that thing. I've never been trained. I'm not taking that responsibility, So, so then you look and you say, okay, how can you not upset people? How can you cross train? And this all goes back to the automation side of it, right? Because a lot of people, I think, would show up, interesting for you to comment on this. Like, sometimes I'll find out from people that they just told the dispatcher they couldn't come in today because their other job they were still at their other job for 2 hours. So instead of them saying, I'll see you in 2 hours, they're like, I can't come in at my other job, Whereas if you have an automated sidewalk machine or a machine that at least can learn how to run mains, the customer is like, hey, he's there. They're there.
Yeah.
The person hops in the machine and then they're done. So, that's the stuff that excites me. And I want to inspire engineers that listen. The industry doesn't necessarily need to snap a finger and flip a switch and say, it's all automated now. We need automation to become our third shift.
Yeah.
When nobody's out, nobody's around, the fewest amount of interactions with other human beings, so those people can stand down and sleep for 4 to 5 hours. It'll make people want to actually work in the space, and it'll allow people like you and I to do what you want to do and have shifts of workers so they're fresh. And then you'll be able to pay them more because the automation's saving you money, so they won't be greedy and say, if I don't get to work the full 25 hours in the snow event, I'm going to go work for XYZ contractor that allows it.
Well, and I think that's where the opportunity is in a lot of this. It's a perfect, in a perfect world, yes, we'd be replacing people with technology, but we know that there is a epidemic labor shortage in this industry. Like no matter what, like nobody, as much as I love snow and ice, nobody is, very few kids I think are growing up and being like, I want to, shovel snow or operate a plow truck or do this stuff. And, while that's a shame, we have to realize that's a reality. And so, something that's been a mission of mine for the last while, it's like, how can you pay more money to less people, and upgrade the caliber of your staff, where you take the best of what's out there and, reward your better staff by automating tasks, whether that's in your office. There's a whole office side. I know we're not necessarily going to talk about that, but there's lots you can do there. but also like in the field, like as you can automate more and more things or become more efficient, it gives you a lot more budget to play with. And so, if you're able to pay someone 25% more in our world, that is like that's a tremendous change.
Yes. Well, and listen, we can talk about backside. I mean, anything that automates a business, whether it's billing software, clock-in software. I mean, that's technically it's automating, right? But I look at, you know, you said something earlier, a lot of it in our business and the snow side of it. Um, Most people that are making that software don't understand the intricacies of the business. You brought something up, you know, fire exits. Like for us, fire exits depends on the site. Like if it's a 1 to 3 inch snow, they're last priority. But if it's a heavy snow, they're actually first priority because if the business catches on fire and they can't push the door open, you're in trouble. So, how do you manage them? Right? It's like like you said earlier, how do they know? Yeah, in 1 to 3 inches of snow, we want to get everything shoveled and salted. We can do the fire exits at the last. But if you're having a drifting event and there's 2 feet of snow on the fire exit, you get those done first. The and the problem is there's not enough interaction back to the software companies because they don't want to ride in one of our trucks all night and learn. So if we don't grab the bull by the horns and do it ourselves, I don't know that it's ever going to happen, right?
They're on tech hours. You don't wake up till you start at like 10 a.m. The snow's
Exactly.
melted by then. Uh,
Yeah. Well, and it's
uh,
funny,
yeah.
there's someone that's making some hardware, and I had a great dinner with him. And if he listens to the show, he's going to know who I'm talking about. And he had said to me, like, yeah, I should come hang out and I'll drive around with you for 4 or 5 hours. And I'm thinking, 4 or 5 hours, that's barely getting the machines warmed up. Like, what do you mean? Like in a heavy snowstorm, like you better pack an extra pair of socks. We're going to be running. It's 20, 25 hours. But that's the stuff people are assuming yeah, they work an 8 hour shift and they go home, they go to sleep, they start the next day. We found we were using a clocking software called Chronotech. And the biggest thing we had to get them to adapt to is to not clock the people out automatically after
At
12
midnight
hours. Yeah, because it's
or
like, no, no,
12
no,
hours.
like they are probably still working. Like you cannot clock
Yeah.
them out, you know? So what are the things, so obviously you already hit on the fact that the stuff you're using for landscaping is not working for snow. So how difficult has it been for you to figure out how to do this software, and how are you doing it? Is it in house? Or are you working with a third party? How are you handling that?
Well, we haven't hired software developers at my service company, no. But we're building an in-house solution right now. And in the next while, we'll be launching this to other people that might be interested in it. And to be honest, it's been a really fun thing for me because like I've been doing snow for 18 years, and so working on software is an interesting. It's really fun. Like it is fun because it's kind of like snow. Like you can go and you can build something, and then it exists, and it's kind of like clearing snow, and the parking lot's clear, and you feel good. It's the same feeling. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge because you have to. It's the same thing that you're talking about. Like I have to explain to engineers, hey, this is how it works. This is how they make all these assumptions. I'm like, no, that's an incorrect assumption. Like, like you're saying with the 12 hours, or they're like, what do you mean like a shift could go into the next day? I'm like, well, yeah, that's how it works. Like we could start at like 6 p.m. and we're still working at like 8 a.m. the next morning. And then, or, even like, hey, what do you mean? Like you might have to redispatch something. I'm like, well, yeah, like it might keep snowing. So it's like, I've seen this same thing where people have this very, like, if you're not familiar with the snow industry, it's kind of hard to build software for it. But, it's been really thrilling. And it's something, that we're really laser focused on dispatch. We're not trying to build something that's like another CRM. I think CRMs have been built more, they've been built well enough already. And we're just
Yeah.
trying to laser focus on solving the dispatch problem.
Yeah. No, I think that's brilliant. I mean, that's honestly, I always say the dispatchers are like the liver of the snow removal industry. They're dealing with everybody's personality. They're dealing with guys like me as the owner being like, what the hell are these guys doing? They should be done already. They're dealing with the people saying, screw Joe. I'm out here freezing my ass. I mean, at the end of the day,
And
they
that,
are literally the liver. I don't want to say the heartbeat. It's the liver of the organization. And if you can make their job easier and keep them around, It's the people that are keeping the people on site that you want to make happy with that software, right?
And the reality is, depending on the company, like we run a routed model. So like we do very few dedicated sites because we're stringing together lots of um, kind of small to medium sized sites together. Um, that's a very complex dispatch. That's like you have to
Yeah.
understand the crew, you have to understand the equipment, you almost have to be able to visualize everything in your head. And in my world, there's about 4 or 5 people that can do that. We have a dedicated dispatcher, but outside of that, there's myself, there's a few other leadership team people, and there's only a couple of people that can kind of figure out where all the puzzle pieces go to get stuff done. So you really have to have that deep understanding of the crews, the sites, and also what's going on out there in the field.
Well, exactly. And that's what it takes. Like, for us, that's what happens. Like, I cannot be the guy that sits in the office during a snow event. I have to be out there. I've got to be able to drop a blade. I have to be able to see people. But really, I want to be out there to teach. I enjoy pulling up to a site and being like, sit in my truck while I show you how to run this thing, and
Yeah.
I go. But that's also the eyes and the ears to get back to your person or people that can stay in the office, which is a totally different personality that can do that. Um, and that's the thing that I think that people, especially making not only hardware equipment to automate, but the software side of it, like you're doing, um, unless they're an experienced snow professional, you can't possibly fathom what we do. It's like and by the way, I don't want to sound anybody that's in our military or been in the military, don't take me wrong for this, but I know there's been some snow events, and I think about people that have fought for our freedoms. Think, oh my God, because you don't realize what it's like to be sleep deprived until you are sleep deprived. And then you realize that there are very few spaces that allow people to work the hours that our spaces allowed. And in my and it's like I think back to like military soldiers, like you're in it and you're in it till it's over, or um so
Yeah.
what's
And you
the
don't want to
longest
like,
shift?
what, sorry.
No, go ahead. You said
No, I
you
was
said
just
you
gonna
were
say, I think there is also that it's like, it could be very like again, we don't want to liken anything here. So I know what we're trying to be careful, but it can be not a similar, but like, it's like, it is kind of like you're out there and you're out there fighting something. And, you know, I know all of us in the snow business, we have certain dates tattooed on our arms. We could, in my world, there's November 11th, there's April 16th, and there's January 17th. These are all dates. These were storms that made you,
Yeah.
because they were tough, and we all know that. But yeah, I think you're asking about longest shift. Somewhat embarrassed to say now, but like in the early days, I did 68 hours once.
Holy cow, I've never met somebody that beat me. So my longest was 57. And
Okay,
and wow, man, congratulations. That's pretty good. The
I was 21 at the time, or so.
okay.
Uh,
So it's funny because as I get older, someone that I looked up to in the space for quite a while when I was younger would say to me all the time, man, snow removal's a young man's game. And in my mind, I'd just be like, yes, stop being a Sally, whatever. But I'm 45 now, and I can tell you, I get nauseous now. It's like it's totally different, but yeah, 57 hours. And what's crazy is I went 57 in one blizzard and 52 in another. And both times I fell asleep and my eyes didn't close. So so it's like, for people listening that don't do snow removal, you force your body to be awake so long because the phone calls are never going to stop coming. Like that's the thing. People are like, dude, you should be resting and this and that. But it's like there is no rest. The phone calls never stop. The people have to be out. With slip and fall liability, what are you going to do? Tell them like, yeah, we sent everybody home to sleep, and then they're like, well, you should have shift workers, but it it's an industry
it's hard to
starved
do.
of labor. you know?
And I think the things that, I think this is maybe what makes people, and when you make, obviously now we're all several years along, so you figure out how to get redundancies and stuff. But, also when you're, I think a lot of these times when you're doing this crazy shifts, your businesses are a lot smaller. You're confounded by other problems. Like I remember early days, like, you go have a storm and then all of a sudden all your equipment starts breaking down. And then, oh, this machine's offline. This machine's offline. And it can be, it's stressful.
Well, it is. So, you know, we do a lot of snow now, it's as you do also. And what happens is if you stay comfortable, you can kind of deal with the long shifts. Um, but then what starts to happen is, it's something little stupid like you guys probably do this anyways, but in our market, we're zone 5 when you think of temperature. So they like to fuel suppliers like to just treat your fuel, with just a fuel treatment, and we always like there to be a certain percentage of kerosene in our fuel mixed because then we don't gel. Well, they didn't mix one day or 1 month. They just did the treatment without the kerosene. All of a sudden our loaders are gelling not gelling, they're waxing everywhere. Our diesels are waxing, and we're all looking around like what is
What's going
happening?
on?
And then you realize, oh yeah, they didn't treat with kerosene, right? Those are the moments, because now you're doing everything with gas. You're throwing new fuel filters on, so the people that thought they were going home and sleeping are going to smell like diesel for the next decade because they're trying to get fuel filters running, or diesels running in parking lots. That's the stuff about snow where I listen to other podcasts or other shows, and it's like sometimes in my mind, I'm like, you can separate out the actual real people from the posers, because
Yeah.
there is, I don't care how good you say you are, every plan I've gone into a snow removal event with gets blown up at some point in the night.
Yeah. And you're just waiting for, there's always something. I think the craziest thing had happened in the last couple of years, the previous software solution we were using, they decided to do maintenance in the middle of a snowstorm.
Oh my God. That would
We
be
were down
terrible.
for, it was only like 45 or 50 minutes, but like we're emailing support. We're like, what is going on? Like, and it was one of these storms where it reached from Chicago through Toronto to like the Atlantic Ocean. I'm like you have customers that you can't be doing maintenance right now. They knocked
Yeah.
everybody offline. People are like, hey, where do I go next?
Yeah.
So it's just
No,
like it's yeah.
well, and so, and I think that's what people sometimes, that's their fear of the technology though, right? It's like you start to rely on it. I mean, I was having a conversation with my stepson the other day, and I was like, when I look back now, like I said, I'm 15 years older than you. So I was still calling people on like a dial phone. And that's when I remembered people's phone numbers.
Yeah.
Now you just go on your phone, Ray, boom, hit dial, and you're done. You don't actually know that person's phone number. It,
And I think
it,
something that's important for like your engineers or anybody listening, and this is what I tell our software team, is we're not just like a service company. We're a utility. And for lots of us, we're like an emergency service to a degree,
yeah.
Like in Toronto, we could clear paramedic stations. Like,
Yep.
it has to work. Like whether it's a software or some type of automation technology, like like failure isn't an option here. You can't have something that's going to fail. You have to really think it out. And like we rely on it. We're a utility, we're a public utility as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and that's exactly it. I mean, we are an emergency service. It's the only thing that's probably allowing us to still run these ridiculous shifts. I think one of the
Yeah.
things that I'm most nervous about in our space is one day when somebody pushes to make us keep books like over the road truckers. That'll be the moment where, uh, honestly, it's it's only going to be people that have some sort of technology component or a great dispatch software that are going to be able to adapt to deal with that. Because I say it all the time, and I do see myself as a future thinker, but we all have to be preparing for that day. That day is going to come. And when it does, I think our customers are going to have to be educated. there's going to be a significant rate hike. Like people keep talking about snow rates for insurance and all the other stuff, but when you actually think about it, in order for this industry to have 12-hour shift workers, you're in for a shift, you're in for a B shift. You have to run the same way the municipalities would. And the reason they're outsourcing to people like me is because they can't find
They
people.
can't do it.
They can't do it. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. They put the laws in place for the union municipalities. Then they can't find anybody that wants to work the night shift. So then they're like, well, put it out to public bid and outsource it. So now here we are running around doing it.
Trying to solve the problem.
And that was their way to solve the problem. So my biggest fear and what pushes me to be on a show and have a show like this is to say, okay, the only way the private contractor is going to survive this is there has to be equipment that runs at night, automatic.
Yeah.
Because go ahead.
No, but yeah, even like you're saying, like even if you can deal with like clearing like the parking lot, and then you can take your labor and staffing down to just, finding shovelers or finding other stuff, like it removes a whole layer of complexity. And the more you can automate, the better. So,
well, I bring it back to what you said earlier.
Yeah.
It's actually the hardest thing for us to find are the shovelers, right?
Oh, that's true.
So that's the thing. Everybody keeps on wanting to try to automate a 16-foot box pusher or the snowplow, angling snow. Listen, that's in a heated cab. You're listening to the radio or a podcast like this, maybe. You'll do that all night. It's the shoveling. It's the de-icing. One of the things I keep telling people, and I will be the person that makes it, and I'm saying it because hopefully people that can make the stuff hit me up, is we all talk about pre-treatment and brine, but look, I'm sure you would expand on this too. Everybody wants the brine until it starts to snow a lot.
Well, yeah, like we dived deep into brine a few years back. And the way I explain it to everybody is brine is amazing because you're using less chlorides, but brine is also terrible because you're using less chlorides. It's a double-edged sword. It's good because in the right circumstances where you can handle that, but then you end up, if you got like really cold, dry snow, it's amazing. You can pre-treat, you can post-treat with it. But the issue sometimes comes, I think, especially you in Chicago is similar to Toronto. You end up with these warm to cold events, and you just can't overcome the dilution with liquids. Like it's hard to overcome it. And the people that do are putting down like crazy amounts of liquid, or they're doing several applications at rate. They've got like one site and they're just lapping it. Well, that's great, but not all customers are paying for that. So,
well, and look, so see, here's we go into the automation side. So it's like we have, I think it's like, I don't know, 11 trucks that are dedicated brine trucks. And those guys go out in November and December and we're pre-treating because it's what we do. My brother's super passionate about it. He's into this podcast and be like, you should have had me on because that, but anyway, but here's the thing. When you don't have a CDL driver for an actual granule truck, you sit the brine driver. You will always put it in the granule application truck. I don't care what anybody says. That's another one of those. Don't bullshit me. I'm in the space. You're not fooling anybody except for the posers, right? And I look at it and I'm like, okay, what's the easiest piece of equipment to automate? It's brining equipment. You're running a pump. You know how fast it's going, the machine's going, and you can tell it how many gallons to put down on a square foot. So this is what I try to tell people is stop trying to automate the big scary thing. Front end loader is like a Great Dane. I have a Great Dane. I'm a dumb guy, and I have a Great Dane, and everybody's scared of the Great Dane. Nobody gives a shit about the Shih Tzu. They don't even pay attention to it walking down the street. Automate the small stuff. Get people used to it, then get into the big stuff. And then your front end loader operator can be like, oh, the freaking sidewalk machine is stuck on a mound of snow I left, and they can get it running and hop back in their warm machine.
Well, and going back to mowing, actually, I was a sidebar. I'm very crazy. I don't even know how I ended up being like in this conversation. at the hotel bar at the Lawn and Landscape Tech Summit. Two people just having it out, whether or not, you know, the for automation, whether or not it's going to be robots pushing a lawnmower or a string trimmer, like the humanoids, or like the actual robotic mowers. It was the most fascinating thing. But yeah, you know, I think it's kind of crazy. I think you could have like at some point these like humanoids that are, you know, doing all that manual work that's very hard to automate. So
Yeah, that's something. I mean, even myself, I've never even thought about the humanoid side of it. I mean, I know that, for me, it's about getting our space to see it all differently. It's like,
yeah,
I have hundreds and hundreds of these smaller Husqvarnas and Crest machines, and people keep on trying to get me to get the big zero turns. And I say, look, and fully automatic zero turn does 4.5 miles an hour. Okay. I can do 9 miles an hour with a person on the zero turn. And if the person has to watch the 4.5 mile an hour machine, the person might as well do it. But when I put the little machines out, nobody watches them. They cut all the time. And I don't care how slow they cut. It doesn't make a difference to me. It makes no difference that they have an 11-inch cutting disc. Who cares?
yeah,
There's a lot of people in our space that just can't get past it, right? They're like, oh, and I'm doing this with 72-inch zero turn, and that's what I do. Okay, well, hey, keep doing your thing. You'll adapt. You'll pick one thing or another. It'll come out. But you know, just looking at our space, like even this podcast has gone so sideways. I'm not asking you
sorry.
one question. No, it's my fault. I actually, as a host, I feel like I've let you down as a guest because half the questions I had written, I haven't even asked you. But there's so many opportunities in this space, and there's so many
Yeah,
things that can be overcome with technology. People, though, have to start to realize in order to do it, we have to think a little differently about the space, and
yeah,
and we have to get away from the people that go online that are like, oh, but you're taking jobs, because those, if you're an engineer listening, those people are not the people like yourself and I that are hiring people. If you're in the space of hiring in this industry, you realize there is just not enough people to go around.
yeah. It's such a scarcity mindset. You know, we gotta have some abundance here. So
So let me get back to your business.
yeah.
So, what are you looking to do? I mean, are you're here today. What do you plan on doing in the next 5 to 10 years in your business? Are you staying on the trajectory you're currently on? What's your focus going to be?
Yeah. So no growth. Very
Yeah.
interested in transforming the rutted landscape maintenance space. So I feel like we've kind of been talking about, like, everybody's focused on the large dedicated site model, which is awesome. And we have a couple of those, and I love them. Those are great sites, right? But I think that there's an underserved portion of the market in these sites that require to be as a part of a route, because it's like we're a seasonal market. So I'll use like seasonal. It's like a $8,000-$10,000 site. You can't park one crew there. So you have to figure out, how do you move, one crew from, maybe a couple of sites to, on the high side, maybe 12 or something, right? You're doing all small locations. So how can we transform that using technology and make it in a way that I think people want to do this? And then what ends up happening, this is why my fear, why a lot of people end up going towards focusing just on large sites, because as the business gets larger, it gets to be a lot less hub and spoke and a lot less revolving around the owner. And it's hard to translate all the details for all these small sites. And so I think we're building our system that will allow us to scale and to kind of continue to build this network. And for us, it's really, it's kind of akin to like a cell phone network. It costs a lot of money to set something up to get some assets in an area, but as you add more and more sites, like, the marginal cost is not that crazy. It's kind of just like for Verizon or something. Like, a new subscriber doesn't cost them anything, but it costs them a couple $1 million to put up that cell tower. So it's like, we want to continue to spread what we call the purple zone in Toronto. And, eventually also my other company help other people do the same thing in their markets.
Why do you call it the purple zone? I mean, obviously, I know that the rental side is got that in it.
Oh,
but,
all of our trucks are purple.
See,
Oh, it's our company color.
good thing I asked that question. See, so purple's like compared to royalty, right? Isn't that that purple color? That's the- my stepson. Purple's his favorite color, and there's something
Yeah.
about purple. And anyways, but
So all
why
of our
purple?
crews are purple, purple shirt, like purple high vis and purple. Like we call ourselves the purple people. So
That's awesome. Yeah, so do you paint all your trucks purple then?
yeah, we used to paint them. Now we're doing like a partial wrap. It's we're debating just go back to painting them because it used to be cool. Like we used to get crazy brand recognition because like we'd have like solid purple trucks, but then we've been getting into more of a mode where we're flipping fleet, and so it's obviously a little bit hard to flip your fleet when you're painting stuff purple. But like our kind of like long-term hold assets like Isuzus and some of our heavy duty trucks are all painted purple. And we still have a few pickup trucks that are, but we're purple's our color. So, and I kind of just chose it like completely random. Uh, we used to be blue and green like a lot of companies, and I was like, oh, it should be different. And so I literally woke up one day and it's like that saying when you're a business owner, you can wake up and change the color on the letterhead, and that's what happened. And I went to my graphic designer, and he's like, hey, are we designing like what do you mean purple and green? What does this give you like a snowboard brand or something? And I'm like, trust me, it's gonna work. And so it worked out.
Oh, that sounds so. So this is another off to the side comment here, but we are white and blue, and because blue is my favorite color, and I just picked blue. And I just got a new Z06 and it's rapid blue. And my
Mm-hmm.
customers, even though there's only blue on the door, they're like, dude, that's almost like Langton blue, you know? And now I'm like, dude, I should paint all the trucks rapid blue. Like that color
Absolutely.
code is there. If you just go to the body shop, and all of our trucks should be that color, and Ford it'd be grabber blue. It's almost the same thing, you know. But all my people, you know, we've got 120 trucks. So my brother John in particular is like, you know how much effing money that's going to cost us? But I'm like, yeah, but what is it worth in the branding? What's
It's a
it
lot.
worth in the recognition? You know?
Yeah.
So
Like that. And I'll tell you, just like it is a painful experience having a unique color because like you'll try to replicate it and you can do it fairly well with paint, but like printing and stuff, like it's like an uphill battle. You're like, this isn't the right purple, or it's for you, it won't be the right blue, but it is worth it. I think people recognize it. And it's that, you remember it used to be you had to like hit somebody 7 times of a marketing message before they notice you.
yeah, I
I
thought it
think
was 18. I thought it was 18 drips now. It's
yeah,
18
now it's like
drips.
18 or 20. So it's
Yeah.
like, how can you stand out? And how can you be like, we're not just, Langton's group, we're something else. I think like when you have, it's always slick when companies, I think you can paint your gear and have stuff different colors. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's cool. I'm glad I'm glad I stumbled upon that actually. So so I mean it sounds like even though you have the rental business, it's only there because it's Snowside, right? So I
yeah.
mean yeah. So I mean this is definitely your baby. So we haven't talked much about the landscaping part of it. So, what do you guys focus on in the landscaping side?
Yeah. So we kind of have a bit of like our legacy residential business, bit of a kind of like a hangover from hold on, that's not the nicest way to say it. We like our customers, but we've just slowly been moving away from that, and so we're not as focused on that side. And what we're working on is building out our kind of like commercial, or not even so much commercial, more like condo maintenance division. So we service lots of condo buildings, garden beds. We actually do a lot of gardens because we're like in an urban core, a lot less grass. Um, a lot of our lawns and turf that we do are really, just fairly small. Um, but landscape is a far smaller portion of our business. So we're about 70% snow and 30% landscape.
Okay. And what's your percentage in commercial versus residential?
So in the winter, we're 93% commercial. And then in the summer, it's a lot closer to probably about 40-60. So like 40% residential, 60% commercial maintenance. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the only way to. So do you guys run any inverse snow blowers up there, or are they all front mounted?
There's people I do, but not in the urban core. So our residential, we actually shovel about sure 5,400 residential properties. Just kind of crazy. But it's all hand shoveling because we're in an urban, like tight urban market, and you can't just like go. People want you to do the whole thing, shovel around cars. It's a really like detail operation.
Yeah. See, I need to get you to come and see me in Illinois because first of all, you can see all the stuff I'm doing with the robots, the small robots on the grass that you might be able to plug in. But the have you seen those little Yarbo, those small snow blowers that are
Yeah,
out?
yeah, I have seen them. Have you tested them?
Yeah, we've tested them. I actually you know,
Steven still has to call me back. I think his name's Steven, right? At Yarbo
uh
or the routes.
well, so Ken is who I deal with them
Okay.
down here. But yeah, the only thing I'll say that I really want to see them do better on is I just don't like and they need to have a their bumper needs to come farther out so that you can't
Mm,
interact with the foot. So not to say anything bad about them, but it's like, maybe some of these people that are designing their robot only have like a size 10 shoe, but I have a size 16 and it gets caught in the auger every freaking time I stand. It would. I've never gotten it caught because I'm smart enough, but if I just drive it up, their bump stop doesn't stick far enough out of the machine to not let my foot hit the auger. And it's the simplest change, but this goes back to engineers just being stubborn. It's like you
yeah.
tell them, hey, I need you to do this for me. I will probably be one of your largest customers. And they're like, yeah, we don't think we need to do it. It's like, well, then I don't think I'm going to buy the machine. Right. So if they came to me tomorrow and said, hey, we have a size 20 rated bump bar on the front of our machine for you big Americans, I would start putting them in. They work great. If I was not worried about the liability, the machine because of that, I would have them on residential sites and subscription all over the place.
And to be fair, I think I think that like the whole liability thing is more like it's kind of a bit more of like a Western world concept. So I think like Yardbo's made in China, and
Yeah.
as you go travel the world, like liability is not as big a concern, right? So it's not how everybody's always thinking. So, but yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely is
Well,
interesting.
yeah. I mean, seriously, it's amazing how well it actually works. And one of the things that they do that is actually quite amazing is you can actually, because that machine has 360-degree view cameras, and you can actually get it unstuck and move it without being in front of the machine. So like imagine a day in your dispatch office where it's like the machine's stuck on a I don't know, let's say a mound of snow or something that the city plow threw up. You can actually back it off and do it all remotely, you
Oh
know.
wow,
So
that's really cool.
yeah, so I mean it's pretty impressive technology. It's just but what I see with that is where the space is going. You know what I'm saying? If they've developed something like that, there's more coming. It's like I'm working with that Snowbotics company right now. Um, that's the company that's got the boss plow on it, trying to get them to do a brine machine on the back of it. Um, so I mean it is coming, especially for you.
Yeah.
You'd be able to use a lot of it in your urban areas, especially overnight.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's exciting.
So, anyways, on the show, I always like to talk about people's background and what caused you to have this underlying disease of being an entrepreneur. So tell me a little bit about the younger version of you before you grabbed a snow shovel. Are you into sports? Tell me about your family. Kind of let us know about you outside of work.
Yeah, I was like the opposite of into sports. My earliest like memory as a kid in sports was getting the shit kicked out of me by like coach's son because I was playing soccer and I was a terrible player. So I was kind of being a little bit more of an athlete is more become an adult thing for me. So I'm learning how to play hockey right now and all that. So I actually I didn't play sports, and I think I ended up in doing business because I think I got tired of going to summer camp. So I used to have to go to summer camp, and then I remember like that summer after I went and got a lawnmower, and so I did that. I did that instead, and so I'm not really sure what it was that kind of like sparked that interest. But I definitely had like really supportive parents, like my parents and even my grandma. They used to like drive me from, uh, they used to like drop me off in neighborhoods with my lawnmower in the summer times. So I have memories of like folding up the handlebars of my mower and putting them in the back of like a Sebring, a Chrysler Sebring, and getting dropped off in neighborhood, and I'd have my route. Um, and I think it's just the fact that you just kept, I just kept going with it, and I just didn't stop. So I've actually never had like in Canada we call it like a T4 slip. I'm not sure you guys call it in the US, but I've never actually had like employment income. Like I've always been some form of self-employed or a business owner, just good and bad. Um, but I think that what ends up happening and what I've learned is that really running a business and doing that is all just about problem solving and seeing where there's problems that you can solve and there's an opportunity. And I think, people that get this disease where you just keep starting businesses because you keep seeing problems everywhere. You're like, this doesn't make sense. Like, hold on. Like I see this other company doing stuff this way. Like, no, this shouldn't be like that. We should have, the customer experience should be this way. Or, you just see opportunities everywhere. And so you just have an eye towards it. And then it's just, you need that, that mindset to go and do it. And I think something I'm very thankful for is over the years, I've actually been able to meet lots of Americans. So I'm based in Canada. And so Canada is a very kind of like conservative business climate. And the whole Canadian identity, to be honest, is if you ask a Canadian what it means to be Canadian, it's not American. Like that's the that's the main differentiator. And so over the years, I've been in like peer groups and stuff, and so kind of that like sheer will and like conviction and having that idea, and then like you know being willing to tolerate that risk. Like I picked up a lot of that from like my U.S. friends, and I'm super fortunate for that kind of in retrospect because sometimes you have to go out there. You have to be different. You got to be, you have to go challenge. You see everybody else doing something one way, and you're like, I think it could be better, or I think that the business should look like this and not look like that. And so I think that's I I don't know if I answered your question, but that's that's my comment on it.
Yeah, no, well, we were talking about you as a kid in sports and how you got into this. And it's interesting you bring that up because the whole what's a Canadian, not an American. Because yeah, you know, I find that, I mean, I was just in England. I'm in the process of buying a company there. And it's funny when you travel and you go different places. I mean, in the United States, we're capitalists. We take risks. It's I say all the time, this is living the American dream, doing what I'm doing. It's not the dream to everybody, but it is definitely been my dream, and I turn it into a reality. And I think what you said is spot on. I mean, at the end of the day, entrepreneurs like us, we're just okay with taking risk. And I think the older I get, when I was your age, um, I used to be worried if everybody liked me. Like that was the thing. I wanted to
Mm,
try to do everything and try to get everybody to understand my thought process. And if they didn't understand my thought process, I almost took it personal. Like maybe I was thinking it wrong or whatever. But now at 45, I realized that if being an entrepreneur means you're 3% of the population, and being a visionary entrepreneur probably means we're 1% of the population. A lot of people are just not going to understand me, and that's okay.
yeah,
That's okay with me.
it's a lonely spot, and I think that's something like in a lot of peer groups we talk about. It's like a lot of people say they're a business owner, but are they? A lot of people are really just self-employed. And not to crap on them or anything, but it's a lot different from being like a one-person company to having 100 plus staff and capital and stuff deployed. And the thing I like to, the thing I kind of, when I look back on my career so far, it's like, I think the best thing about being an entrepreneur and doing this is like, it's the greatest self-improvement program available because you literally are always the bottleneck in your company. So you have to figure out how you shift your mindset and how you, um, can develop because like, if you don't, like the company will never outgrow the capacity of the owner and the
Yes.
leadership in it.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And you said something earlier on in the show about how you're trying to get into like more of a linear or square footage performance model instead of a time, right? But for me, what I found was, I don't equate time. I I want to be clear on this so you understand myself, and what we do is I don't put times in there because I'm trying to make them hit a time metric. I actually it's
Mhm.
we figure out our fully burdened labor rate and then turn it into what it takes for us to make money, right? Um,
Mhm.
and then we just make sure they all know that that's what they're hitting because since I was into sports, I always equated to if I had a practice without keeping score, that's what made me hate practice. I was a lineman, so I was going to get to run into somebody and beat the shit out of them, whether we were playing in the game or not. But
Yeah.
it was fun in the game because if I was winning, I could look at the score and be proud. And if we were losing, I had to reflect on what I and my team were doing to not allow us to beat them and to try to get better quarter after quarter, right? And then that's what made me start to realize in my business, like, okay, well, if you only look up at the score when it's over,
Mhm.
it's too late. But if you look
Yeah.
up at the score every play, now you're in it to win it. So every metric I've put in place for my companies has been to tell people, look, I'm not doing this because I'm trying to like crack, like crack some sort of code nobody's seen before. At the end of the day, we need to make X amount of profit to be able to buy those front end loaders and skid steers and trucks you like to sit in, and to be able to give you a 3 to 5% raise a year. I mean, something my general manager and I implemented was when we give a review, we have this whole point scale, and if somebody can't get at least a 3% raise, we actually let them go
That's
because
smart.
we say,
That's
look,
some
if
Jack
you're
Welch type stuff there.
Yeah, because if they're not performing at a level that's elevating them as a professional, they're also not elevating the company professionally. So I don't want to keep on dead weight. I want to keep people on that are working to make more money because if those people stay, I'm making more, right?
Yeah.
Um, so just to be clear, so yeah, I like people to know if they're winning or losing. And then I'll tell you this because maybe you put this in your software and we'll end up working together on this one day. Is we like to be able to identify the top 5% and the bottom five. And then think about it like this: your top 5% of people are usually finishing first. So then instead of then almost penalizing them for being so much better, we try to get the top five to train the bottom five. So imagine on one of your
Nice.
sites, your girl's like, hey, I'm done. Okay, well, listen, Juan was in bottom five last snow event. Why don't you bring your machine or hop in your truck and head down there and for the rest of this event, teach them.
Yeah. That's an awesome idea, man. That's yeah. You want to see if you can pull them up, and unfortunately sometimes you can't, and then that's where you gotta kind of create that turnover and have space for better people to come in. So
Yeah. Well, so
um
you should look into
yeah.
adding that into what you're doing because I'm not building software for dispatch, but if that type of thing was in there, you
Yeah,
know,
we're able to
it,
rank people like on amount of square feet produced and metrics like that. So we can actually already rank them.
See, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you'll have to, when you're ready, you're gonna have to demo me this because
Okay.
this sounds really cool to me. And much like yourself, I mean, I'm about ready to try to figure out, and I got a call later on today to try to figure out how to turn Langton into a platform, type company and start figuring out how I'm gonna bolt some things into it. So I want to scale. I want to keep going with Langton the same way I'm doing with AOS. Um, because I actually think being involved in both is where the synergy is for me, just like you doing the software and having the rental and having the snow company. So
Well, you
um
know what it is too. Like, I'm not sure what your makeups are, but like, if you only have one business, you're gonna end up driving like the people who run it crazy. So like, you almost need to have a like somewhere else to go before they tell you get lost.
so it's so funny. I mean, I literally, there's all sorts of companies that have, they call it fractional CFO services, right? I use one. My friend Gabe's
Mm,
a fractional CFO. And, because they always say a good CFO probably only needs to be in a 10 or $20 million business 15 hours a week. I mean, if even that, sometimes they can come in once a quarter, but no one ever says that for a CEO. For me as a CEO, like I'm an idea guy. I just want to keep growing, growing, growing. But you are right. If I'm at the office, I actually look and I'm like, man, I'm distracting people. I'm telling people ideas that don't really care, but they're only listening because I'm paying them to listen. And they're not going to, they're not the person that's going to bring that idea forward, anyways. Um, and then you realize, yeah, like I could run Langton Group bankrupt with my ideas, so
yeah.
it's better for me to go in and say, hey, these are the few things I want us to do, make it happen. And then I
You
go
need
to
a
them,
good
say, oh,
integrator who's going to say no. It's going to be like, listens to like one, the 1 in 10 that are good. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So no, it's interesting you bring that up because I do think you're right. I mean, and that's actually why I'm thinking I've got to turn my companies into the platform because, you'll talk to people, and I don't want to throw any shade at anybody, but people will call me and be like, we see you're in the automation and we see you have this. So go buy that company so you can focus on that company. And I'm like, you're assuming I need help. Like, I don't have a focus problem. Like I
Does
have
Elon
no
Musk have a
problem.
focus problem?
That's what I say to people all the time. Elon Musk is launching rockets, making cars, and making taxis and humanoids right now, and no one is telling him focus on one. That's not happening. So there are certain people in this world that do better when they can just be themselves. Like
Exactly.
and even we make this mistake in America, we make this mistake all over the world. Is like we want everybody to fit a mold, and I mean, it sounds like the things you're seconding or even saying first. Um, some of us just we're not built for that mold, you know.
And the reality of it is like starting a company or like growing it, it's really like it's no different than being an artist. It's a very creative thing, and there's ebbs and flows that come with that, right? Sometimes you can get writer's block, yeah, and then sometimes all of a sudden you can get a dump of knowledge or idea stream, and that's when you can capitalize on it. So it's good to have a couple different outlets for that.
Yeah, totally. I couldn't agree more. I told someone actually it was my Uber driver once, and we've become friends just on Instagram. He's a saxophone player, and he asked me the other day like what genre of music I like. And this is totally abstract, but I told him I said my life is like a soundtrack. So it just depends on what I'm in. Like if to me, if you look at and watch a movie and they have all different music for all different times of the movie, that's like my life. Like if I'm working on something and I need focus, I'm going to listen to a soundtrack. If my competitor does something that I think is a little bit like, oh, did they just throw a little shade at me? Now I'm probably listening to an Eminem song or some rap that's just battle rap type stuff, right? But that's the way I think a lot of entrepreneurs, our brains work. We're in constant competition. We're leading, we're leading our people to battle. And then we also have to create, like you said, it's art. We're creating something that others haven't seen yet. So it's pretty awesome.
Cool.
But yeah. So
Okay.
well, I think we blew over our hour time span here. So did I miss anything to that you want to cover or other than that, I think this is a good spot to just say that I think we hit it off and I think we're going to talk a lot more in the future.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's good.
Fantastic. All right. Um, with that, thanks everybody for listening to the show.